Good morning. This is Miraida, and in this video series, I'm going to read to you Don Quixote, one chapter at a time. If you don't want to read and want me to read to you, if you don't like to read and want me to read to you, or if you just enjoy the sound of my sultry voice, here I am. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to do one chapter at a time, one chapter per video. And I'm not going to read the intro or the preface because it gives spoilers, and I want to have the story, I want you to get the story as it is. Later, if you want to research it or just read it all on your own, then feel free, of course. This Don Quixote is Spanish classic literature, and it's referenced in a lot of American literature. Mark Twain referenced it a few times. So let me see, and it was published in the 1600s. 2 parts. It's in 2 parts, and I'm going to be reading it for you guys in English and in another video series in Spanish. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being here and enjoying reading as much as I do. Let's go ahead and get started with chapter 1. Get cozy, get comfy, get your coffee or whatever you want to get, and relax. And welcome to Don Quixote, chapter 1. At a certain village in La Mancha, which I shall not name, there lived not long ago one of those old-fashioned gentlemen who are never without a lance upon a rack, or an old target, a lean horse, and a greyhound. His diet consisted more of beef than mutton, and with minced meat on most nights, lentils on Fridays, griefs and groans on Saturdays, and a pigeon extraordinary on Sundays. He consumed 3/4 of his revenue. The rest was laid out in a plush coat, velvet breeches with slippers of the same for holidays, and a suit of the very best homespun cloth, which he bestowed on himself for working days. His whole family was a housekeeper, something of 40, a niece not 20, and a man that served him in the house and in the field, and could saddle a horse and handle the pruning hook. The master himself was nigh 50 years of age, of a hale and strong complexion, lean-bodied and thin-faced, an early riser, and a lover of hunting. Some say his surname was Quijada or Quesada. However, we may reasonably conjecture he was called Quijana, i.e., or for example, lanthorn jaws. I guess Quijana comes from like the Latin word quijada, which is your jaw. We'll look that up. Though this concerns us but little, provided we keep strictly to the truth in every point of his history. You must know, then, that when our gentleman had nothing to do, which was almost all year round, he passed his time in reading books of knight-errantry, which he did with that application and delight that at last he, in a manner wholly left of his country sports, and even the care of his estate, nay, he grew so strangely besotted with those amusements, that he sold many acres of arable land to purchase books of that kind, by which means he collected as many of them as were to be had. But among them all, none pleased him like the works of the famous Feliciano de Silva, for the clearness of his prose and those intricate expressions with which it interlaced seemed to him so many pearls of eloquence, especially when he came to read the challenges and the amorous addresses, many of them in this extraordinary style. Okay, it's like a tongue twister coming. You ready? Okay, this is the style he liked. The reason of your unreasonable usage of my reason does so enfeeble reason, that I have reason to expostulate with your beauty, and this the sublime heavens, which with your divinity divinely fortifies you with the stars, and fix you the deserver of the desert that is deserved by your grandeur. These and such like expressions, well, I lost my, these and such like expressions strangely puzzled the poor gentleman's understanding, while he was breaking his brain to unravel their meaning, which Aristotle himself could never have found, though he should have been raised from the dead for that very purpose. He did not so well like those dreadful wounds which Don Belianis gave and received, for he considered that all the art of surgery could never secure his face and body from being strangely disfigured with scars. However, he highly commended the author for concluding his book with a promise to finish that unfinishable adventure. And many times he had a desire to put pen to paper and faithfully and literally finish it himself, which he had certainly done, and doubtless with good success. He had not his thoughts been wholly engrossed in much more important things. Important designs, not things. He would often dispute with the curate of the parish, a man of learning, that had taken his degree at Sigüenza, who was the better knight, Palmerin of England or Amadis de Gaul. But Master Nicholas the barber of that same town would say that none of them could compare with the Knight of the Sun, and that if anyone came near him, it was certainly Don Galore, the brother of Amadis de Gaul, for he was a man of most commodious temper. Neither was he so cynical, nor such a pulling, whining lover as his brother, and as for courage, he was not a jot behind him. In fine, he gave himself up so wholly to the readings of romances that a nights he would pore on until it was day, and a days he would read on until it was night. And thus, by sleeping little and reading much, the moisture of his brain was exhausted to that degree that at last he lost the use of his reason. So he read so much so that he went crazy. A world of disorderly notions picked out of his books, crowded into his imaginations, and now his head was full of nothing but enchantments, quarrels, battles, challenges, wounds, complaints, armors, torments, and abundance of stuff and impossibilities, insomuch that all the fables and fantastical tales which he read seemed to him now as true as the most authentic histories. He would say that Cid Ruy Diaz was a very brave knight, but not worthy to stand in competition with the knights of the burning sword, who with a single backstroke had cut asunder two fierce and mighty giants. He liked yet better Bernardo del Carpio, who as Roncesvalles deprived of life and enchanted Orlando, having lifted him from the ground and choked him in the air as Hercules did Antæus, the son of the earth. As for the giant Morgante, he always spoke very civil things of him. For though he was one of that monstrous brood, who ever were intolerably proud and brutish, he still behaved himself like a civil and well-bred person. But all of the men in the world he admired Rinaldo of Montalva. But of all the men in the world, he admired Rinaldo of Montalvan, and particularly his sailing out of his castle to rob all he met. And then again, when abroad, he carried away the idol Mahomet, which was all massy gold, as the history says. But he so hated that traitor Galilon that for the pleasure of kicking him handsomely, he would have given up his housekeeper, nay, and his niece into the bargain. Having thus lost his understanding, he luckily stumbled upon the oddest fancy that he ever entered into a madman that had ever entered into a madman's brain. For now he thought it convenient and necessary, as well for the increase of his own honor as the service of the public, to turn knight errant and roam through the whole world, armed, cap-a-pie, and mounted on his steed in quest of adventures, that thus imitating those knights errant of whom he had read. So he's just gonna get dressed and go out and be and be a knight. I lost my space. And roam through the whole world, armed, cap-a-pie, mounted on his steed. And mounted on his steed in quest of adventures, and thus imitating those knights errant of whom he had read, and following their course of life, redressing all manners of grievances, and exposing himself to a danger on all occasions. At last, after a happy conclusion of his enterprises, he might purchase everlasting honor and renown. So, I get it. He read the books, it got in his head. He said, I'm going to be a knight like those knights, and then everyone's going to talk about me. There's going to be honor, and and I'll be renowned everlast. Cool. He decided to go be his best self, lost his mind. Okay. The first thing he did was to scour a suit of armor that had belonged to his great-grandfather and had lain time out of mind carelessly rusting in the corner. But when he had cleaned and repaired it as well as he could, he perceived there was a material piece wanting, for instead of a complete helmet, there was only a single headpiece. However, his industry supplied that defect, for with some pasteboard he made a kind of holt, beaver, or visor, which, being fitted to the headpiece, made it look like an entire helmet. He said he needed the accessories. Then, to know whether it was cutlass proof, he drew his sword and tried its edge upon the pasteboard visor. But with the first stroke he unluckily undid in a moment what he had been whole week a-doing. He broke it. He's like, let me try, let me test it. He had to, I do the same thing. Let's do quality control. He did not like its being broke with so much ease, and therefore to secure it from the like accident, he made it anew and fenced it with thin plates of iron, which he fixed in the inside of it so artificially that at last he had reason to be satisfied with the solidity of the work. And so, without any experiment, he didn't try again. He fixed it and he didn't try again. So without any experiment, he resolved it should pass to all intents and purposes for a full and sufficient helmet. The next moment, he went to view his horse, whose bones stuck out like the corners of a Spanish reel, being a worse jade than Ganella's, qui tantum pelli et ossa fruit. However, his master thought that neither Alexander's Bucephalus nor Sid's Babienka could be compared with him. He was 4 days considering what name to give him. He gonna name his horse. That poor little bony baby. He was 4 days considering what name to give him, as he argued with himself There was no reason that a horse bestrid by so famous a knight, and withal so excellent in himself, should not be distinguished by a particular name. And therefore he studied to give him such a one as should demonstrate as well what kind of horse he had been before his master was a knight errant, as what he was now, thinking it but just, since the owner had changed his profession, that the horse should also change his title. He said, I'm not me anymore, I'm a knight. So you can't be just your name horse. We need a title for you. Create your reality then, Sancho. Or not Sancho. Create your reality, Don Quixote. Should also, where was it? Oh, that the horse should also change his title and be dignified with another, a sonorous word. Such a one should fill the mouth and seem consonant with the quality and profession of his master. And thus, after many names which he devised, rejected, changed, liked, disliked, and pitched upon again, he concluded to call him Rocinante, a name, in his opinion, lofty sounding and significant of what had been before, and also of what he was now. In a word, a horse before or above all the vulgar breed of horses in the world. When he had thus given his horse a name so much to his satisfaction, he thought of choosing one for himself. And having seriously pondered on the matter 8 whole days more, at last he determined to call himself Don Quixote. Whence the author of this most authentic history draws this inference that his name was Quijada, not Quesada, as others obstinately pretend. And observing that the valiant Amadis, not satisfied with the bare appellation of Amadis, added to it in the name of his country, that it might grow more famous by his exploits, and styled himself Amadis the Gull. So he, like a true lover of his native soil, resolved to call himself Don Quixote de la Mancha. It's like I would be like Mimi Pavon of LA. since I'm here now. That doesn't sound so regal. And now, Don Quixote, lover of native soil, resolved to call himself Don Quixote de la Mancha, which addition to his thinking denoted very plainly his parentage and country, and consequently would fix a lasting honor on that part of the world. He said he's gonna rep his street. He's repping for his town, La Mancha. And now, his armor being scoured, his headpiece improved to a helmet, his horse and himself new named, he perceived he wanted nothing but a lady. Get that girl. On whom he might bestow the empire of his heart. For he was sensible that a knight errant without a mistress was a tree without either fruit or leaves, and a body without a soul. I love it. A man without a woman is a body without a soul. Should I, said he to himself, by good or ill fortune chance to encounter some giant, as it is common in knight errantry, and happen to lay him prostrate on the ground, transfixed with my lance, or cleft in two, or in short, overcome and gave him at my mercy, would it not be proper to have some lady to whom I may send him as a trophy of my valor? That when he comes into her presence, throwing himself at her feet, he may thus make his humble submission. Lady, I am the giant Caraculiambro, lord of the island of Malindrania, vanquished in single combat by that never deservedly enough extolled knight-errant Don Quixote de la Mancha, who has commanded me to cast myself most humbly at your feet. That is, that it may please your honor to dispose of me according to your will. Ha ha! Oh, how elevated was the knight with the conceit of this imagery submission of the giant, especially having bethought himself of a person on whom he might confer the title of mistress, which it is believed happened thus. Near the place where he lived dwelt a good likely country lass, for whom he had formerly had sort of an inclination, though it is believed she never heard of it, nor regarded it in the least. So he liked someone that lived near, but she didn't know who he was. She never heard of him. Her name was Alonza Lorenzo. Not Alonza, Aldonza. Her name was Aldonza Lorenzo. And this was she whom he thought he might entitle to the sovereignty of his heart, upon which he studied to find her out a new name that might have some affinity with her old one, and yet at the same time sound someone like that of a princess or a lady of quality. So at last he resolved to call her Dulcinea, with the addition of del Toboso. So Dulcinea del Toboso. He didn't rename this woman. With the addition of del Toboso from the place where she was born. A name, in his opinion, sweet, harmonious, extraordinary, and no less significative than the others which he had devised. That was funny. And that was chapter 1, Don Quixote de la Mancha. See you next video for chapter 2. Hope you had a good time. I'm Miraida, and thank you for listening.